everyone, and welcome to Truth Medicine. My name is Carrie. I'm your host, and Truth Medicine is a community where we explore the lessons, stories, and life-changing moments that have brought women to heal by living their medicine of truth. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Isabel. She's been my friend for a few years. I've met her in coaching groups that we've done, and she's come such a long way on her journey. She's an intuitive healer, transformational guide who uses transpersonal energy healing and human design to empower women. So I just want to welcome you, Isabel. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Carrie. I'm so excited.
Awesome. So excited. It's so good to connect with you. We haven't really connected in a while, so it's been really refreshing to hear from you and see you and be in your energy field. First, you're welcome. I want to start with a fun question. Can you tell us something interesting about yourself that most people don't know?
Oh my gosh, something interesting about myself that most people don't know. Okay, there's two things that come to mind. I don't know if the first one's very interesting, but on my left foot, my little toe, I have a little toe on my left foot. That's like the first
my
thing
goodness.
that came to mind.
I just remembered that. I love it.
And the other, we'll go on to something else. I don't know. Most people don't know that when I was younger, I remember it was like I was like 8 years old. I remember like laying on my bed with a little tape recorder and like rapping, rapping to like this little tape recorder cassette. I don't think I was very good.
Did you made this rap up?
No, it's like I forget what the name of the song, but it's like I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a
yeah.
like
who sings that, baby?
Such a vivid. I don't remember. I just have like such a vivid memory of me rapping into my little cassette player. I don't know. We'll let the people determine.
They're gonna be like, that is not Biggie.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just always curious, like what people have to say to that question. You know, I've never asked it, but I'm just like, I've never asked it on here, but I'm like, what's, something fun that people don't know about you, So yeah, it's a way to kickstart this interview. On a serious note, so you have just transformed so much like in the last year and a half. And I'm really excited to dive deeper into that and like know what it was that kind of just clicked for you. Because, for myself, me and you were like kind of in the same boat. Like, what are we doing? Like, what do we want to do? And then all of a sudden you just kind of like, boom, you're like, this is me. And you just show up so differently and more powerfully. So I'm really excited to explore all of that. And I'm curious, you do transpersonal energy healing. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Or what is that to you?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Carrie, for like seeing me in such a beautiful way. I think sometimes as I go through my own journey and I see other people go through their journey, we forget that like we're growing. And so to hear you say that actually feels really nice. So thank you. And transpersonal energy healing is really connecting with your body and connecting with your emotions. So, we carry a lot of emotions from childhood, from traumas, from something that somebody said that just didn't land quite right. And those are messages in our body. And so it's really are you even in your body? I think for a long time I wasn't. So it was like, ground your energy. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I'm walking around doing all these things and I wasn't really in my body at all. And so at transpersonal energy healing is really getting back into the body, realizing it's safe there, realizing that it's not just aches and pains. It's like, whenever something was difficult for me to say, like my throat would get so tight. And like, I just thought that was like normal. That's how you live life with like heaviness in your chest or like, yeah, the tightness in the throat or like, oh my gosh, my lower back. And I just thought that that's like, there's like a saying in Spanish, los años no vienen solos, which is like, years don't come on their own. So like as you get older, you get more achy and you get more whatever. But it's just like, for me, that's just been not tending to those aches, to those signals from your
Mm,
body. So energy healing is really going into the body, getting your energy grounded, understanding what that really means on like a deep physical level, and then processing. There's a lot of inner child work, shadow work, um, family dynamics, realizing your own strength and power. So this is what I have done personally on my own journey of healing, and what I offer to clients as well.
wow, that's so beautiful. I really love that. Yeah, I think so many of us walk around thinking that we don't really have to deal with our issues or problems, and maybe we don't even know how, but yeah, like when we really allow ourselves to go into that depth, go into that pain, then that's when the change really happens. And I'm curious, like, I know what you do. I know you specialize in family dynamics, unhealthy family dynamics. To share a little bit with the audience of something simple, a simple definition of what you do.
Yeah. So I think in growing up I'm from Colombia and I grew up in the United States, and um, just in general, the message is always like family is so important. You have to stick together. You have to like, you sacrifice anything for your family. Like your family is above everything else. What we kind of fail to mention is like, what if you didn't really grow up in the greatest environment within that family? What if your family wasn't also great? So it's like this mixed message of like, oh my gosh, here I have like also as an immigrants, it's like our parents sacrifice so much, so it's like I have to make sure I do good. Um, Growing up in the context of the United States, also, the message is like immigrants aren't welcome. Latino women aren't smart, whatever it may be. So there's all these things of like, well, I have to make sure that I'm doing really good. I have to make sure that I make my parents proud. I have to make sure that their sacrifice was worth something. I have to make sure that mom and dad are okay, which is something that like we've learned, or at least um empaths and heart-centered people, which is who I tend to work with. It's like we're taking care of everybody else from a really young age, but we forget what it's like to take care of ourselves.
Mm,
So like that's when the throat tightness comes in, but that's been like since I was really little. So an example would be, to bring a little bit more tangible, it would be something like um now I'm thinking of like really like big emotional ideas. I'll give
mm,
you an example that happened this past weekend. A sibling and my dad were on the phone. We were FaceTiming with family, and my dad was trying to make fun of me because I had bangs. And usually I wouldn't say anything. I would have just been like, no, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Like, it's fine, whatever. I'll be the butt of the joke. But I'm kind of done with that. Like I don't want
mm,
to do that anymore. That's not fun for me. And so I said, I find it really interesting that you, um, when it's just me and you down on the phone, you never make fun of me. So why are you listening to my sister trying to make fun of me and you guys try to make fun of me together? Like, I don't really like that. That's not cool. Um, and they were just kind of like, haha, like kind of laughed it off and then continued, but they stopped doing it. So it's something really, it can seem really small, but actually is really triggering. I'm like, I don't want to be made fun of anymore. Like, this isn't okay. This isn't fun for me. And that's just like a little thing. But it can be something really big, like really, going deeper into like the relationship with my mom has always been really, really, just I think growing up, I thought mood swings and emotional outbursts were normal, and that's not. That's not healthy. That's not, and that's not my fault. I think
mm,
also as a kid, it's like I gotta make sure that I'm being really good so that mom doesn't like freak out about something. And it took me a lot of years to realize that, like, no, that's not my fault. Like, I wasn't doing anything. There wasn't anything that I was doing or not doing. But we don't, or at least for me, I didn't understand that as a little kid. Um,
it's
and
safe to
still,
say.
yeah, and it's still wanting to like have that relationship with my mom, however that looks, and that's looked differently throughout the years of calling each other every day, a couple times a day, to not speaking to each other, months at a time. And just realizing that it's okay. I can still love her. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no,
Mhm.
I think love and relationships can mean whatever you want them to be. So I
Mhm.
think it's like realizing, okay, what are these little things that like trigger me? What am I not comfortable with anymore? So like I'm not comfortable with my family making fun of me for something so silly as getting bangs. Like that's not like fun for anybody.
Yeah.
Um other than like the person doing it, but I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I don't want to do that. That's not okay for me anymore.
And I
So
don't
that's like,
even know if it's fun for the person doing it. I think it comes from a place of, um, they're not feeling connected, so they wanna feel connected, and it comes out in this, like, roundabout way, and it's like, this is the unconscious, like, trying to find its connection, but it just does it in a nasty way, and it's like, I really love that you're talking about family dynamics because they're our first relationships, right? So
yeah,
a lot of our issues, a lot of our pain comes from that small child from our family,
yeah.
they're our first relationships. So of course, like, it plays out, and I think it's so beautiful because I know you've come such a long ways with like standing up for yourself and in that way, with your parents and in your family and creating boundaries. What do you feel has been the most challenging with your family, and how has that kind of, set you in this empowered role?
Yeah, I think, boundaries is like, it's scary. But so before, um, to give you a context of like Isabel before, it was I'm also like the middle child. I was the middle child for a long time and then my brother was born. So it's like I have always been in this like mediative role. Like, okay, like I gotta make if mom and my sister are fighting, like what can I do to help mend it? Or, if my other two sisters are arguing, like what can I do? And really stepping back and being like, no, like this isn't my role. Like I don't need to take care of anybody. They need to figure out whatever it is that they're going through, and really stepping back from being this caretaker. And so it's because that's also very like I'm forgetting myself. And so how can I be this like empowered, badass woman if I'm forgetting me? And so
Mhm.
when I think about boundaries, it's like, okay, I first and foremost, I'm going to make sure that Isabel's okay. And not from a selfish way of like I don't care about anybody else, but it's like I don't want to abandon myself anymore. Like I've abandoned myself with my family so many times of like not voicing when things are not okay, or kind of like the codependency of, oh my gosh, if I actually say what I need, then this person's going to go away, or I'm not going to be lovable, or whatever it may be. And so it's really been learning about, no, I can voice my needs. And that's all like, it's not so much the outcome because sometimes they won't be able to meet them. They don't know how to. It's like a new language. So one, there's a couple steps of like, okay, me trusting that I can voice a boundary or put a boundary in place or voice a need, which is like, that's like the biggest, that's like half the battle. Cause it's like,
Mhm.
ooh, my throat gets tight, my tears like start swelling in my eyes,
Mhm.
like my heart will start racing. So it's like putting up that boundary. And then the other person might not be able to meet it, and that hurts too. But I can't control that part, you know? I can't control the outcome of me setting up the boundary, but if I don't set up the boundary, that's me abandoning myself.
Mhm.
So it's funny you talk about like within the past year or so that I've kind of embraced or then like show
Mhm.
up differently, because it really has been. And I was going to move to Colombia in March, got stuck in Florida with my siblings, which like really like this was like, okay, let's put into practice all this like work that you've been doing. How are you going to navigate it actually living with your siblings, which I hadn't done in a long time. Um, and it's been tough. Like sometimes I voiced a boundary. It was like, what? You're crazy. And then me just like totally crashing and like being so sad and like heartbroken, but then realizing at the end of like beneath that, it's like, oh my God, I stayed with myself. Like I actually like did it for me. And that feels better. Like not in
Mhm.
the moment because it's really crappy. In the
Right.
moment when you set a boundary and that need isn't met, it hurts. But that's part of it. Like I think
Mhm.
also, um, as we talk about this, it's the fear of doing it is like even bigger than actually doing the thing. So like, and not just boundaries, this can be like inner healing. It's like, oh my God, that sounds so scary. I don't even want to look at like all that pain. I don't even want to look at it. And so the thought of even looking at it is like even more intense and powerful and painful than actually looking at it. And I think
Mhm.
that's the part too that people kind of get tripped up on. It's like, oh, I don't wanna go, like, look at, like, the ugliest parts of myself, the most unlovable, like, oh, no, that sounds way too scary. Like, even the thought of it is, like, too scary. But then
Mhm.
actually going in, it's not as scary. So, yeah.
Yeah. One thing that came up for me when you're sharing that was thinking about, in my world, we talk about conscious communication, meaning that, you're going to speak in a way that isn't from this reactive place, that's done in like a soft way where you can both consciously communicate back and forth and understand each other. And, for like with my family, they're not like that at all. They just, know like maturity in that sense of communicating. And I have found that voicing my feelings has it's not always like accepted. And through time, it's like it's hard with family because it's like you feel like you're bound to them, like you owe them something, you have to be there. And I found like no, like if this person's not respecting my boundaries and what I'm asking, then like you say, I have to choose myself. And I have to be the one to be like, you're not going to have a place in my life. It's one of the hardest things, but I found like through creating those boundaries, people like feel like, oh, like really, she is really standing up for herself and, choosing herself. So either I change or and respect that person, her, um, or I won't have a place in her life. And I think, sometimes that's the hardest thing for us. So I'm curious for you, for the people watching, what advice would you give to someone that is listening to this and is also going through the same thing with family, but is terrified to speak up, speak their truth? What advice could you give them?
Yeah, so, I mean, start small, and I'm talking really small. Like, I remember I started doing this meditation where I kind of wake up my body through the different chakras. And it's like, let me just warm up my voice because your voice is how you're going to set your boundary, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, let me just warm up my voice and like let it know that like I'm here and I'm going to use it. And I remember the first couple times it like made me nauseous. Like, even just to do this, I was like, oh my God, I feel sick. Like, it was like too much. Um, but start small. Start with like a small boundary. Maybe it's I don't know why this is coming up, but like, hey, I'm going to buy this orange juice and I don't want anybody else to drink it. Like, it's just for me and it's going to be on the fridge. I don't know why that like I've never done that, but like I don't know why that's coming up. Maybe somebody needs to
Need to
hear that.
hear it. Yep.
Um but just start really really small because if we think about the big boundary, it's going to be too overwhelming. And then it's like, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be like, I'm not going to be loved. It's like, I owe them something. Nobody owes anybody anything. Um, so start small. Start like, hey, hey, throat chakra, I'm here. Like, just
Mhm.
something as simple as that. Like every morning, just being like, hey, I'm going to use my voice. Like, I'm going to use my voice. And this is a practice that I still do every morning. Like right now, my mantra is, I let my fire out through my voice, which is like when I
Wow.
think about my fire, it's like my strength and like
Mm.
I have like all these fire placements in my astrology chart. So I'm like, okay, what do I do with all of that fire? So I'm like, okay, my fire's in my I let my fire out through my voice.
I'm
And
stealing
just
that.
start small. Yeah, by all means, you can have whatever I have.
I love it. It's so good.
Um, the other thing about family, as you were mentioning earlier, of like it is the hardest. These are behaviors that we learned from day one, and these are generations. Like these are patterns that come from before we were born, from our parents, from their parents. And so that's why it feels really hard sometimes. But our families created the buttons. We've also created buttons for our other family members. Like, if I want to bring somebody down, I can know exactly what to say. I choose not to because that just feels icky to me. Um, and I'm sure I probably do it sometimes without intent.
Mhm.
But it's always coming back of like, okay, was that actually true to me? Um, and boundaries don't have to be like, oh no, like they don't have to be this like dramatic, like nasty thing. I think sometimes when we think of boundaries, it sounds so like, blah, but they don't have to be that way either.
Mhm.
If your approach is, hey, actually, I just need a minute, I'm going to go walk outside and come back in,
Mhm.
that's fine. Like, sometimes I need to do that. I can get really overwhelmed, like with my family, and I love them, but it's like, I just need a minute to like be by myself. I
Mhm.
just need a minute. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to be right back. And then I just go take my little break.
I love how you're simplifying it because I even though I'm a person, like if people know me personally, they know that I like speak up and speak the truth. But when it comes to my family, it's like sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I try to avoid the conflict, and maybe it's just because I'm a Libra trying to stay in harmony. Um, but I try to avoid the conflict, and I find that me being vulnerable with my family has been the hardest thing. So I love the way that you're just simplifying it. Um, what's been your biggest challenge, and who out of your family has been the biggest challenge for you to like overcome?
Um, I'd say the relationship with my parents in both different ways. Like, um, and not to be like super stereotypical, but my dad is like, he's not as expressive emotionally. So
Mhm.
like that's hard, I think, just growing up. Um, and then my mom being on the other side of like being super emotional and like not knowing how to ground her energy and self-regulate. And so I think it's been learning to like navigate both of those things. Um, for me, most recently, it's been one of my siblings and just like having compassion for the other person, but also like, okay, this isn't about me. So like, I'll give you this is such a specific example, but in human design, there's gates, there's channels, there's centers defined, um, and I guess like to give a little intro, human design is the blueprint of the energy that you came into this lifetime with. So it shows you like how you're designed to process
Mhm.
emotions, to make decisions. I find it so incredibly helpful, and um, I'm taking this advanced reader training that we dive into the gates and the channels. And I have this channel that's called the channel of judgment, which is I have this ability to be able to see when invited in, like, okay, I can see what's not working. I can see what needs to be changed. It's like I judge, but not in like a, oh, I'm better than you. It's like,
Mhm.
no, I just have a really good eye at like figuring out like what isn't working. While at the same time having this like vitality for life, having like my own taste in the world, having expensive taste. It's the gate of expensive taste. And I realized that like unfortunately, and my sister had shamed me so much around this growing up. So it was like, oh, like you always like the expensive thing as if that were a bad thing, which I'm also like, now I'm like, why is that a bad thing?
Mhm.
Like
I'm
why is
with
that a
you.
bad thing? So I also like asking for my opinion, and then if I share it, it's like you're so judgy. And I'm like, well, then don't ask me for my opinion if then you're going to judge me for the thing I just shared with you of
Mhm.
how I view the world. So having this realization of like, oh crap, like I've actually been like shamed for this for many years. No wonder it's hard for me to like step into and embrace that part of myself. But knowing how to verbalize it within that specific framework of human design is also so liberating because I'm like, oh, okay. I have to wait to be invited in. Otherwise, it does come off super judgy. Not that
Mhm.
so it's like,
Mhm.
okay, that makes sense. Like that makes sense, which is something that I've also worked on. Like, do you want me to just listen? Or like, how do you want me to answer? It's like, do you want me to answer with how I really think? or do you just want me to be supportive? That's another question that I've like, as a projector in human design, it's like you really have to be invited in to share your wisdom because the other
Mhm.
person might not be able to receive it. Um, so I think I've also realized it's like it's at different stages. So, I think the relationship with my mom is the one that's I've given most attention to just because
Mhm.
my mom.
Mhm.
And my dad, and then most recently it's been my sibling. And with my younger siblings too, it's like which I it's like I don't want anything bad to happen to them. Like, how can I make sure that they don't have any bad experiences? But it's like, no, they also need to like go through whatever it is that they're going through. That's part of their karma,
Mhm.
their lesson, whatever. And who am I to kind of take that away from them? Um, so I think it'll always shift and it'll always be different stages. And, sometimes when I'm as a client and I'm sitting on the other side with a healer of whatever form that may be, it's like sometimes it's like, damn, I'm still talking about that. But it's like,
Mhm.
these are years. I've lived with that for years. So, like, yeah, it's okay. And it might manifest in a different way later. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I go through that same thing where I'm like, okay, I've been working on the same thing for so long. When is it gonna like, will it ever dissolve? And this one woman I was working with, she was sharing how like she actually does work around somatic healing.
Hmm.
So it's like you can intellectualize and visualize all you want, but it holds like trauma holds in your cells. And if that doesn't get out, then you're gonna keep repeating. And she said something that was really profound to me. You're always gonna have the same like similar fears, but you once you like somatically release it, you'll be able to handle it better. It's not going to trigger you in the same way. Like it'll always be there. Like for me with speaking, um, if you guys have watched my previous shows on here, like I talk about just being able to speak in front of an audience, it's like I get nervous every time, every single time during an interview, especially in the beginning. She's like, it's going to be there. She goes, but your nervous system will calm down and relax, and you'll know that you're safe because a lot of it is like we're not feeling safe in our body because of whatever. So it doesn't ever really go away. You just learn how to calm yourself and know that you're actually really safe instead of feeling out of your body. So that has been like profound for me and just somatic healing itself. So yeah, I would love to go back to little Isabel and walk us through one of the times where you were really struggling. We'll stay on the topic of family because that's kind of been your biggest challenges through with family.
Yeah. Whew. You like asked that, I'm like, I'm getting teary-eyed. Um, so I was born in Colombia. When I was 5, my dad moved to Minnesota to like set everything up for us. And it's so funny because I can't specifically remember this part of my childhood. I can remember other things, but I remember the feeling of being just so sad um that he wasn't around. Um
Mhm.
and I guess like I stopped eating and I like was just so depressed. So it's like, whew, like that still um lingers and I can talk about it and I'm not like um I guess that's another thing. I cry really easily,
Yeah, you
which is
do.
like I used to not cry at all. I remember like I used to not cry at all unless I was drunk and then I'd let myself cry, which is like a whole other story. um but yeah, so little Isabel was just really sad. Like from age 5, my dad wasn't there for about 2 years because he was in Minnesota. He'd come back. But then that was another time I really remember being like, "Is mom okay?" Like it was like
Mhm.
forget little Isabel, like sad that her dad's gone. It's like, well, I got to make sure that mom's okay now. It's like I didn't want to. I don't know if it's. I guess I didn't have the tools to like navigate feeling that way.
What tools
Um,
have helped you navigate it now? What tools have you used to help you navigate it?
I mean, I've done like all types of healing, like work on myself in terms of
Mhm,
like energy healing. We've even done a few sessions of like
mhm,
tapping, EFT, Psyche. I love experiencing different healing modalities, but I mean, I have a good relationship with my dad, but it is like sometimes, you know, he and my mom and their parents, they're doing the best they can with the tools that they have. And I think this generation is like realizing that, oh, we need new tools. This isn't working.
mhm,
And this hasn't been working.
mhm.
And it's like, you know, I think I sometimes I just cry and there's no mean there's it just it happens. It's like sad that this little Isabel is she
Mm,
was just so sad. She misses her dad so much.
mhm,
And that's okay. I think another thing for a while that I used to do was like, well, I got to make sense of this. What does it mean? Why am I
mm.
crying when she asked me, oh my God, what do I need to go heal?
Yeah,
Like that was like another thing. And now I'm also coming to realize that, like, yeah, that was a part of my life that hurt. Like that moment in time hurt. And, when you asked me that just now, that's what came up to mind. And, uh, it feels tender because it
mhm,
was and seems to be still, but like, there isn't anything that I need to like go fix. It's like
yeah,
I can allow myself to feel it and then, okay, like that happened. Like
yeah,
maybe I go call my dad now and just say hi and like, hey, I miss you, like
yeah.
um
It's such a strong imprint too, and I just wanted to say thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, and it is okay to cry, and, it doesn't mean that you still have to go and heal, just because you still have emotion around something you experienced as a little girl. Of course, it's heartbreaking to think about that, even if you do feel, close to your father now, like, that little girl went through a lot, and it's acknowledging that part of you. It doesn't mean, like, you're still traumatized. So, you
right.
know yeah, I know I'm not viewing you as, like, "Oh, she needs to go heal because she still has an emotion."
No, no.
Yeah.
No, but as we were talking about this, I think that was a younger version of me that did think that. So
Mm,
I wanted to just mention that it's okay to have emotion and
mhm.
not have a story tied to it. Um,
Yeah,
a
totally.
story as in like, I need to go heal and then I need to go fix myself or whatever. It's like, no.
Mhm. Yeah,
No.
healing is interesting because it's like you can kind of get in a spiral with it or a never ending cycle with it as well. And I think can be detrimental too. So there's you gotta learn or you gotta know when and like you need to integrate your healing, you don't have to
Yes.
keep running to a therapist, it's just like, okay, we can be aware that we have pain and we don't have to keep digging deeper because if you seek, you shall find, right? Like you don't have to keep digging in that hole. It's like when things are ready to come up, they're going to come up and you're going to know exactly what it is and you're going to process it in the way if you acknowledge it. But if you ignore it, it's still there. You still know it's there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think tying it back to something that you mentioned earlier of like when you do the somatic work, when you do the energy healing, where you go into the body and like, you dig deep and then it's like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, I remember this. I remember I used to like do this, but it doesn't like consume you as much as it did when you first start looking into it or before you even start looking into it,
Mhm.
if that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big like acknowledgement of healing is like when, let's say, you haven't really like processed or healed a certain core wound, and I'll use it abandonment because this just kind of came up for me recently. Is abandonment used to be one of my core wounds, and I used to get devastated when, somebody didn't show up in the way that I need them to. Like I would be devastated and be obsessive in my mind and, just like couldn't think, couldn't eat, couldn't like I had tunnel vision. And because I've done a lot of work around that, you know, really going into that little child that felt abandoned, and just loving her, I feel like, you know, I don't know if there's ever a true, like you're 100% healed, but there's definitely like I've done a lot of work around it. So something happened where I felt abandoned recently, the other day, and I noticed that I moved through it so much more. I felt the abandonment for sure, and I cried it out, and I just sat with it, and I let myself be with it. And I realized like it didn't hit me as hard. I mean, it hit me to my core for a moment, but it wasn't as long. Like the pain wasn't hitting me, you know, as long as it normally would. And yeah, I just think it's important to know like healing is a process, and you know, you might go back into the same core wound, but you know, the more you acknowledge it, the less likely it is to have such a huge impact on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's such a good example. Like I think when earlier when I was talking about setting boundaries, it's like staying with yourself. It's like not abandoning that part of you that
mhm,
needs um like you just described it so perfectly. You felt the abandonment. Okay, there it is. You're going to feel it, but it's like you're hand holding yourself through it versus like having it just completely take over and like not being conscious of like, okay, I have, abandon is abandonment. The theme of abandonment has been a thing in my life for me too, like what I
mhm,
just described. So it's like,
mhm,
um for me, what I've also come to realize is like maybe I just need more information, or maybe I
mhm,
need to speak my voice or my need.
mhm,
So my
mhm,
need sometimes is I just need a little bit more information. But
mhm,
it's really coming back of like not abandoning my little Isabel or my little
mhm.
self, or like um whatever is happening in here. So yeah, I think.
I think it's cool that you're the middle child. I really didn't know that. For some reason, I thought you were the oldest. You're not?
No, there's four of us. So
Oh, I was like,
my
I've
old
always thought you were the it makes sense now. Like the middle child statistically feels like they're in the middle. Like that's
yeah.
I'm a middle child too. So it's like you want to please everybody and not like step on anybody's toe and make sure you take care of them and be the mediator. I was totally that role. And I think
Yeah.
that's why me and you connect because I think we have similar childhoods
Yeah. And
around
we're very like heart-centered and caring, and like um I think we just didn't know what to do with all of that. Or at least for me, it's like
Mm.
I've also always been seen as like, you're so emotional, you're so needy, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's a need that I have that was never met. So of course I'm gonna be seen as needy. Like
Absolutely.
um
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so proud of you and how far you've come because I remember when in the beginning of our relationship, you know, you were still struggling a lot with your family dynamics. You felt really pulled, like you cared so much about your mom and I mean all of your family, but I know specifically around your mother. What do you like? Can you speak more around your healing around your mom? How did that come? How did that how did you come to your truth with that?
Whew. Um, I mean, I think the thing that up until I was up until like 7 years ago, I always had everything like super planned. And I always was like, okay, how can I help my mom? Is she okay? Thinking that she wouldn't be okay if I wasn't checking in on her, because I had been checking in on her for so many years. And so I remember I was working in ad sales in New York. I got let go and I got a severance package. Um, and I was like, I need to go do something different. I need to like go do something for me. I remember I just like I need to go do something for me. And so I left New York and I traveled, and I had never done anything like that before, where I was so conscious of like, okay, this money is for me and like I'm going to use it for me. and starting to release the thought that I was somehow responsible for my mom's well-being. I think that was like the moment that it really started
Mhm.
transforming, um and kind of there wasn't just like one specific moment of like, oh, I need to go heal my mom wound. Like I think
Mhm.
it was just little steps along the way, different memories that come up. Um, I remember a healer once said to me, like, you can be connected and not attached, which like I think I very
Mhm.
much felt very much attached to my mom. Um, but it was like, okay, I can love her in my own way. I can be connected to her, but it doesn't have to be this like
Mhm.
enmeshment and attachment. I started learning about codependency,
Mhm.
and enmeshment and narcissism and manipulation. Um, and so I think the more that I learned about that, it was like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. And not in like a blaming way. I mean, I love my mom. I think she's so gifted. She's a beautiful person. Like she is like she has so many beautiful gifts. Um, but I feel for her. Like she didn't have the support that I have now. Like she doesn't have friends like you, for example, where we get to talk about these types
Mhm.
of things.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like, whew, it's like learning to hold compassion for the other person, but also healing um things that just happened before I was even born. Um,
Mhm.
and then I just I get overwhelmed because it can feel so heavy and like I think for a long time I was like, I have to make sure that like she's okay if I like she's gonna die if I don't make sure that she's okay. But that's such an illusion.
I would have the
And I
same
think,
thing.
yeah, like realizing that is so liberating yet also scary. But I'm like, they were fine before I was born. Like it's not like I came to save them, but it feels like that so strongly.
Mhm.
So it's been a process, and I think it will always continue to be a process too. Like um, healing, I think for a while I was like, great, you do all this healing, and then you're done, and then you're set, and you're perfect. And like
Mhm.
that's not how life works.
No, that's not.
It's like new lessons will come, so you just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
evolving.
Yeah. I really love the work of Mark Wolin. If you haven't
Mm,
looked into Mark Wolin's work, he talks a lot about depending on what happens at birth and most likely like a lot of us have breaks in the bonds with the mom, and when we do sometimes that does show up, like we feel like in order for us to get mother's love we have to like make sure they're okay, we have to be the good girl, we have to like do everything right, and that's because like the mom's not attuning to the child. So and then it's probably because your mother has a break in the bond with her mother, so like
yes.
there's all this family trauma that needs to be healed. But, I do feel like we didn't necessarily create the wounds within us. And so we on some level we chose the family we came into, but it is our responsibility to heal our pains. And I really love Mark Wolin's work because he takes you back to birth, before birth, and it's just been really profound work for what work I've done on myself around my birth. And my birth was really crazy. I was a C-section baby, ripped from my mom. Couldn't
Mm,
see my mom for 7 days. I was in ICU because I had fluid in my lungs. So that birth experience created a break in the bond. And if the mother doesn't attune to the child, then we're always craving mom's attention and love. And I for a long time it took me like 24 years to move away. Like I felt like she wasn't going to be okay without me. Like
yeah.
and she didn't do that to me. I was just like thinking like I have to be here to save her. Like, yeah, I know.
Exactly.
It's funny. We have the same kind of story.
We're like,
Yeah, but through that work, I was able to be like, okay, like, mom, I love you. And your pain is not my pain. Cause I would take on my mom's pain too. I'd feel it. And I would just like cry about it. And but I've I've been able to really like detach from all that. So Mark Boland's work, amazing work. I hope I'm giving it justice by how I'm explaining
Yeah.
it. It's so much deeper than how I'm explaining it as well. Um, yeah, it's super profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
I something comes to mind as you mentioned that of not taking on the pain of other people. And so um, with my mom too, it's like I can see it, like I can see her relationship with my grandma's relationship with her kid, it just, I can see
mhm.
it so perfectly. And, for a long time I did take it on. So it was like her pain, I was like, yes, let me like not consciously, but like I could totally feel it. And now in the way that I work and the way that I heal is very much okay, I'm setting kind of like a bubble. I feel you here, but I'm not going to take it on, which is I think is another part of learning what's mine, like what has
Mhm.
been mine all along and like what isn't, and how
Yeah.
do I release the things that aren't mine, and how do I hold compassion for the other person but not take it on, which is also like um in terms of my personal relationships and the way that I work
Mhm.
with clients has been so um just helpful where
Mhm.
if I were taking on everything, like I, that just that wouldn't work. Like I don't think I could physically
Yeah.
do that. That just doesn't sound like any fun. So it's very, again, like energetic boundaries of I'll hold you here. I feel your pain. I'm reacting to you, and this is what's like coming up in me, but I don't have to take it on.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Zach Bush says something about empathy, like we shouldn't do, yeah, have empathy for people. We should have reference for people because us taking on their pain or even feeling it does nothing for both of us. But we honor where they're at in their process and
Yeah.
keep the separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with all the stuff that you've gone through in your life and with your family, what has been the biggest lesson for you?
Um, I think so. When I was 9, my parents split up, and we moved into a shelter for 9 months, and I remember I was so ashamed about that, and I felt so much guilt,
Mm,
and, like, I would just I, like, didn't I never told anybody about that, I didn't want anybody to know about that, it was like, I just thought, like, I felt so unlovable because of it, um, and I remember being 9 years old, being in the shelter, this woman's, like, sharing her story. She, like, was missing some teeth because her partner had
mm,
domestically abused her. Also, I just want to caveat, um, my mother decided to take this decision. That was the only solution that she had. My dad did not uh, abuse my mom, but
mhm,
that's
mhm,
um, but I just remember that moment in time, like really marking me and seeing that lady. And I remember being like, I'm never going to depend on anyone except myself.
mm,
And like, yes, that's helped me, but that's also like really like I don't have to do everything on my own. Like, and part of healing and wanting to heal that part, it was like I'm sick of feeling
mhm,
so ashamed. So I
mm,
think if I, there's been a lot more other things that have happened, but I think that moment from being young and like just living this thing that I don't know, in the moment thought that I had something to do with, which I didn't, like realizing that, I think that has probably been like the moment in time that like has probably changed me the most of like
mm,
later wanting to heal that
mhm,
and not being ashamed. And yes, that happened, but that doesn't make me any less lovable, and kind of letting down my armor and realizing, oh, I
mm,
actually don't have to do things on my own. Like I wouldn't have been able to do the healing that I've done if I hadn't worked with other amazing women,
mhm,
including yourself. So it's like,
mhm,
oh, I don't have to do it on my own. Okay, that's actually really like that's actually like is a relief. So yeah, I would say that that's probably the thing that's impacted me the most.
Mm.
And even to be able to talk about it now as like a thing that happened has like, at first I just remember being like, oh God, I just did never, I like never wanted, it was like this fear that someone's going to find out this thing. And now I'm like, okay,
Hmm. Yeah,
that's
I
not,
remember that. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Because you were with me as was, I was going to
Processing.
give a talk and I practiced with you and a couple of other women. And it
Hmm.
was, yeah. And it was like my first time really revealing that that had happened. And, but it's also, I think talking about it has,
Hmm.
it's kind of lost its like grip on me too.
Charge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How have you maintained your courage to follow your truth and, really stay in that truth?
Whew. Um, I think, I mean, I have my practices. So like meditating in the morning is a non-negotiable for me. Like,
Hmm.
um, and I'll do moon rituals and I'll do, um, sessions where I'm the client and working with
Hmm.
another healer. But I think, um, again, it's like going back to my inner self and like not abandoning myself.
Hmm.
So an example is like um I quit my job last year. I was working in corporate and I was like, no, this is the work I'm doing. And it's been hard, like starting a business, navigating all of that, unlearning what working in a corporate world has been like. But it's always coming back to like, okay, what do I really want underneath? And it's like, I want the freedom to live my life however I want. So it's like, even though it's hard sometimes, it's like I come back to me and I come back to kind of that core and that strength of like, no, this is what I truly want. So
Hmm.
it's not always easy. I mean, I have my bad days too, but um it's just like that like core inner knowing of like, no, I can do this. I can do this. Like,
Hmm.
and I want this and I want the things I want for a reason and like trusting that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's having courage even if like no one is really even going to support you, which is an illusion too, because if you feel like you're surrounded by people that don't support you, you just have to seek outside the circle you're currently in and find people that do encourage and support you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole journey of finding your inner truth and having the courage to follow it is not it's not easy, and we have to have a strong support system around that. And I'm thankful for you. For you.
I
You've
was gonna
definitely
go ahead.
yeah, I'm thankful that you have been a big support role in my life, and I know that anytime I'm going through something, I could call you, and you would understand and help me through it. So yeah, if you're listening to this, you're going through a hard time, you're wanting to be in your truth, and you're not surrounded by people, go find somebody that supports you. Even if it's just one person, have the courage to speak up and speak what you're feeling, and start listening to that little voice inside of you. And I think that's where it really begins.
Yeah.
And we're right about time, and I would love to end it with my favorite question. What is a token of truth that you could offer somebody just beginning their journey of self-awareness that could help them along their way to discovering their medicine of truth?
Okay. So I would have to say, start small and stay curious. So as I mentioned before, of like, sometimes we think of healing as like this really big thing, or oh my gosh, my truth, what does that even mean? But like start really small, like start something simple. I'm going to wear my favorite shirt every Monday. Something as
Mhm.
simple as that. Like I'm talking small. Start really small and stay curious because it will change. Like whatever you like might change. For me, I change all the time. So like if I were to be so rigid of like, no, this is the way that it has to be done, then like, oh no, that just sounds awful. So if
Mhm.
you're just starting out, also, if you're listening to this, is probably for a reason. So welcome on this little journey. And whether you just started or you are like years into doing this work, it's always going to change and evolve. So I think start small and keep going small and stay curious.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Mm.
I just want to really share my gratitude for you for coming on and being vulnerable and, letting people witness you cry, because a lot of people equate crying to weakness, and it's just not true. And I think it's so beautiful how you can just effortlessly let your emotions flow through you and have no guilt around it and just give yourself permission.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're welcome. And if you guys are interested in Isabel, and if you guys are interested in Isabel, I'm gonna cut this. And and if this touched your heart and you're wondering how you can find Isabel, where can they find you? Do you have anything coming up in the near future?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Instagram. So my handle is Isabel J Restrepo. That's also my website, and I have a course called From Chaos to Clarity, where we do exactly that. We kind of go through from what is this chaos, what is this overwhelm, what is this anxiety, and get clear on what is it that you really want, like a sneak peek in the moment of what you're needing, and starting small, whatever that is for you. So, for example, for me, years ago, it was like putting 15 minutes of walking outside on my calendar. And now I live overlooking the mountain. Not to say that that's what's going to happen with you, but like starting really small. Um, and yeah, see you on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. So like, see you on the gram. That sounds so cheesy,
The
but I'm
IG.
into it. But before we say goodbye, Carrie, I have to say, like, I have also enjoyed being on this side so much. I remember meeting you for the first time, and like you were like so um I really felt like that fear of speaking, and now look at you, look at this, like this is amazing. I have also loved watching you grow,
Mm.
and like being thankful for our friendship, and um just like we've gone through so many different things together that they make me laugh and they make me
Mhm.
cry at the same time. But in
Mhm.
the best way. Like
Yes.
I'm very grateful for our friendship, and um, just to see you evolve. And this is just what a treat. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And yeah, it's definitely been one of those things where I'm like, I know I want to do this. So it's like, yeah, doing these series have really helped me to just be in it, be in the mess
Yeah.
of it all, and love myself along the way. So, all right. If you guys have watched it till the end, please share this with somebody you think it might change them or touch their heart or awaken something in them. And until next time, you guys have a beautiful week.
Bye.